Hey gorgeous soul, I'm Zoe and welcome to the Oasis State podcast, where we dive deep into all things emotion, energy and intuition. Remember to follow and share the pod, and let's get into it. Hello gorgeous soul, and welcome back to another episode of the Oasis State podcast. Wow, what a year 2025 has been. I am so sorry if I just assaulted your ears with my laugh just then as well, by the way. It has been a month or two since I've jumped on the mic to do a potty, but that does not mean I have not been busy in the background with Oasis State. And just what a bloody journey, hey. Honestly, entrepreneurship is like personal development on crack. And yeah, I've just been spending these last few months, well, that's sort of the point of this episode, is I'm just going to give you a bit of a rundown of what I've been through in the last few years, and how that has led me to be where I am now, and what to expect from me and from Oasis State in 2026. Holy shit. So I don't know too much about this, so don't quote me, but this year apparently in, I think it's Chinese astrology, is like, as in 2025 is the year of the snake, and maybe like a wooden snake or something. And there's just all the astrology girls on TikTok and social media just letting you know, like, because it's a snake, we're in a year of shedding, and fuck me. I can vouch for that. And then apparently 2026 is coming into the year of a fire horse or something like that. And that's about forward momentum. And yeah, I'm just really bloody hoping that it's just no more curveballs for me, because it has been a wild few years and I'm very grateful for them, even though it's been a lot of loss and sadness and grief, which I will update you on. You know, when you just have those moments where you're like, oh man, this is happening for me, not to me. And all of the lessons that I've learned, everything that I've been able to transmute from pain into power, the fear that I've transmuted into love, the separation I've transmuted into oneness, and the confusion and the chaos that I've been able to now transmute and alchemize into clarity. I will always be forever grateful for it. And it has led me to spend the last few months creating my online membership platform called the Oasis State Club. And I'm so excited about it because 2026 will be the year that I'm calling in my aligned clients and community. And basically the platform is a space to help other brave souls that are, you know, on their personal development or spiritual development journey. When we lock into these experiences and sort of make that commitment to do our inner work and self-mastery, as we know, our outer world reflects our inner world. So as we start making these big changes, which is great and exciting in our inner world, so that might be, rewiring our subconscious beliefs to, be more in a space of positivity and abundance and joy and love, as opposed to, say, scarcity and fear and doubt, etc. You might be doing some nervous system regulation. You might be doing some emotional alchemy work. You might just be doing some spiritual exploration in general, which is just figuring out, why am I here? What's my soul? What's my purpose, etc. And all of that is just, is so juicy. That is my bloody domain. That's honestly what I do for enjoyment. And not from a place of, I've broken out of that cycle of perpetually healing and thinking that I'm a problem to fix. But we just have these zones of genius in our life. And mine is definitely just understanding why we're here and how we can utilize our experience and our relationship with life to the best of our ability. And I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, what's your zone of genius? It doesn't have to be personal development. You can still be into personal development and then have a zone of genius somewhere else. But just lucky me, I've got it in that area. But it's because I just know in my bones that I am here to lead a bloody revolution. I wasn't going to say that, but that came out. That's fucking cool. I'm really excited to be on here recording this podcast today because it has gotten to the point in my entrepreneurial journey and my personal journey where I need to start sharing my story, because as I've, given a disclaimer a few times since this podcast episode has started, I'm going to share what I've been through in the last few years, not in heavy detail, but it came to a bookend. So like you've got the bookmarks, like I have bookends. I'm butchering the analogy, but it all started a few years ago when I lost my dad. And then this particular chapter of initiations and trials and tribulations ended, a few weeks ago when I unexpectedly lost my best friend and my dog, Clifford. And, if you know me, you know how beautiful our relationship was. And, and he was just my best mate. And if you've listened to other podcast episodes, you've probably heard him in the background crying or grunting. And he was just by my side throughout all like these last few years and the last 11 years in general. And he, unexpectedly passed away 3 weeks ago. And I'm just navigating that right now, but also from this lens of understanding that there's like a bigger purpose playing out right now. Even though I don't completely understand what's going on, our existential beliefs are just so powerful and potent when it comes to, navigating these seasons of time. Because like I said, if you're still listening to this episode, I'm sure you've been hooked in because we seem to be on a similar journey. But as I was mentioning, we commit to our inner work and our self-mastery journey, and we're doing all of the fun things under those categories of, like I said, spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, etc. And then eventually you will hit a season of time where you're just bloody in it. And it's very much that energy of out with the old, in with the new. And to be honest with you, I did not expect my particular, let's call it like an initiation or like just this season of change. I did not expect mine to be as intense as it was and last as long as it has. So that's cool. No, it's just when you're so deeply rooted in this is the way it's meant to be. It can be confusing. You can be angry. You cannot enjoy it. Like there has been so many times, and like not for like a moment, like for days and weeks on end, where I have genuinely not liked the experience. Obviously, I'm not super stoked that my dad passed away and then my dog passed away. That was, like I said, the sort of the bookends of these initiations. But it's just there's so many juicy lessons that come from that. And I've channeled all of those lessons into my Oasis State Club because I just in my bones feel that I was a student in those times. And we're always a student of life. I'm not like, oh my God, sweet, I've learned all of my life lessons. But the last few years were this training ground because, like I said, you start off your spiritual journey and you start reading your self-help books and you're like, whoa, what the hell? Like we've got so much control of our lives and so much power to access, etc. And that initial part of the journey is just so enjoyable. It's like, it's a lot of deconditioning where like, letting go of beliefs and behaviors that have been pressed on us by society that don't matter to us, etc. And then you're just like filling up your bag of tricks for your inner world and literally just rebuilding yourself. And it's so beautiful. But you're rebuilding yourself in an environment and a world and in relationships and careers and all these different areas of your life that suited the old you. And when the inner work starts working, you will move into a season of initiations, and it's deep change. It can come in the form of heartbreak and loss and grief and just really debilitating experiences. But it's not happening to you, it is happening for you. And that's a huge ethos and reason why I have created Oasis State Club. And I just know, throughout all of these trials and tribulations over the last few years, I still just knew in my bones that it was because it's part of my purpose. And I needed to go through these personal waves of loss and, the void and the unknown and all of this stuff to channel it into my purpose. And my purpose is my business, Oasis State, and the creation of Oasis State Club, where it's going to be a safe place for other people navigating these inevitable seasons of initiation. Because the thing is, a lot of the people around you won't be in the thick of it when you are. And that's why I wanted to create this safe place, so that we can come together, jump on the community calls, and I can guide you through it, because Jesus Christ, it is so gnarly. And I'm not saying this to scare you, but if you're listening to this episode, then you know, are having some form of a similar experience. And I'm here to just share my story, let you know about Oasis State Club, because it's going to be okay. It's not, you haven't done anything wrong. You are going to make it out. It is a temporary experience. It's just a fucking gnarly one. And I just think there's a certain, there's just certain people who are on a similar life path that we're just called into these deep initiations, and it's such a beautiful place to be. So, as I mentioned, my season of initiations and big life changes happened 3 years ago when I unexpectedly lost my dad. And I didn't have a great relationship with my dad. So there is honestly just the primal loss of like losing a primary caregiver. And then there's just layers to it. It's like I lost, the potential that we had to come back together. So yeah, it wasn't like it's a loss of love, because even though we had a complicated relationship, I obviously love my dad, but because we had a complicated relationship, it wasn't just a grief journey for me. It just throttled me into like so deeply, so quickly into this invitation. And that's the thing. It's like, life be lifing. Like, we're not going to have control of when our loved ones leave this planet. And that's the wildest thing about grief is, like I said, even though early on in my self-mastery journey, personal development journey, I'm just like so high on life, because I'm like, what do you mean I'm a conscious creator and my thoughts create my reality and I can have whatever, desires I want, etc. And then you go through something like death, and it puts you back in your place. And I don't know how else to say this, but we need that recalibration. And like I said, the last few years that I've been through, it's just been such a void of I try to tether myself to something, and then that goes away. And that's all part of it, it's like, because now I've been able to build this foundation of who I am and the existential beliefs that I have about life. So by existential, I mean how I believe life operates, what I believe life is about, why we're here, like those really, really big beliefs. And developing those or questioning them, getting clear on them, getting rid of the ones I don't want and prioritizing the ones that do. The first invitation to do that was through losing dad, because like I said, it wasn't just the grief of losing someone I love. Because we had a complicated relationship, I was thrown into the deep end of so much spiritual initiation. This wasn't mindset work anymore and a little bit of breath work. This was, you need to look at everything. Like, you need to do some healing, inner child healing. You need to look at your attachment styles. You need to completely reparent yourself. It's the really, really deep, hard yakka of the spiritual journey. Excuse me. And that is so beautiful. There is endless, potent lessons in that. And I'm so grateful for them. It's not easy by any means. So that's why I'm so grateful I'm on the other side of that. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to have other big seasons of initiation, but I've wanted to have this membership platform in reality for years. And so many past versions of me were not ready for this. And that is okay, because I had to sit in the fire of these changes and these lessons and do some deep healing. And I did mention in this podcast episode that I have broken out of that cycle now of thinking that I need to perpetually heal myself, but that's because I have done that work. You just need to keep meeting yourself in these lessons. So like I said, death just brings about, it's just the finality of it. It's the lack of control, but control is an illusion anyway. We don't have control of anything, like that's one of the existential beliefs that I have now is, when you start your spiritual development journey, you're like, I am the conscious creator of my life, which is true, but you're also co-creating. And these seasons of initiation that we go through and navigating the change and endings and loss and heartbreak and all of the ways that these things come through are to throw you off center, because you can't walk around with this big spiritual ego thinking, I know everything, I'm the conscious creator of my life. Like, yes, you can, but it needs to be, that's not the entire belief. It's like you've got half of the belief, and then you come into these seasons of initiation to refine that belief. And like I said, you can't control when you're going to lose a loved one, but you can control how you're going to respond to it. And that's, even though it was such a cathartic time. It was so scary. I had my first panic attack. Like, I've never had a panic attack before. And, we all sort of had this anticipatory grief about losing our primary caregivers, because that's a whole ancestral primal thing there. But also we just fear losing our loved ones. So, you have this, I've imagined it, I imagined it a little bit before it happened, but when it actually happened, I just remember having this moment of realizing, oh my God, this isn't a nightmare. You're actually living the nightmare now. Like, your dad is gone and you can't make things better with him. And this is your new reality. And that's what death does. It brings you into this new reality in such a brutal way. It's so wild. So that's how I had my first panic attack. So I don't need to give these disclaimers, but it's very death and rebirth energy, very phoenix energy, sitting in these fires and refining these beliefs and refining yourself. It's refining how you sit with your emotions and what thoughts you let filter through your mind, and how you relate to something bigger than yourself, which is the universe and actually yourself. There's so many rabbit holes I can go down with what I've learned in the last few years, but for the timing of this podcast, I won't. And because I've put them all in Oasis State Club, so I don't need to repeat myself. I had to really dive deep into how losing my dad, who I had a complicated relationship with, was affecting me. So like I said, there is just the grief and the loss of someone you love, but I just knew in my bones that this was also an invitation to initiate into the true version of myself. And it's been the most beautiful journey, the most intense, gnarly journey, but the most beautiful journey. And some other notable things that have happened over the last few years, I'm not going to go too deep into them, like I said, but I do actually have a podcast episode I posted this year about starting over in my 30s, because I'm 34 at the time of recording this podcast episode. And like I said, all this big initiation and being thrown into the void all happened in the last few years. So I basically turned 30 and my whole life crumbled to the ground. But plot twist as well, it crumbles to the ground. Like you said, I can't control death. But also there was a lot of times in these moments I'm going to mention next where I had my hand on the match lighting my old life up in flames. And that's that's the co-creation side of things. Sometimes life will bring you things that are out of your control, and it's up to you to respond in a loving way or choose how you want to respond. And then other times you are willingly trimming the fat from your life of things that don't serve you anymore, or they don't serve the new version of yourself or the new life that you are working towards. And it is, again, hard yakka and brutal work, but it is also worth it, because I am the woman that I am today. I'm sitting on the couch, I'm chilling out. But I do not doubt my confidence or my capacity or capability anymore. I am a woman that is rooted in her worth, has a clear sense of direction, feels supported by the universe, and knows that I am always stepping into my potential. So, little disclaimer, that is why it is worth sitting in these voids and these seasons of change and taking the invitation that these initiations are offering you. So as I'm navigating the loss of dad, oh man, it was so wild. It was so wild. I, throughout the years as well, also had to navigate an unfulfilling romantic relationship. And like, just a disclaimer, anyone that I'm speaking of in these podcast episodes, I feel no animosity towards. And that's a really important part of, you know, diving into these lessons and letting them shape you into your authentic self, is that we're not holding grudges. We're not angry. I'm not a victim. I'm like, there is no energy of victimhood in this podcast episode or any time I share my story, because I know that it shaped me into the woman that I am. So just little passionate disclaimer. But basically the end of last year, I ended a 4-year relationship. And like I said, I was 33 at the time. So ideally, you think when you're in a long-term relationship, you're going to end up with them, get married to them, have kids, etc., the whole happy ending. And we weren't in the happiest relationship, and it wasn't his fault or my fault. But I think navigating the grief sort of made me not look at the dynamics of the relationship super clearly, because I was like, oh, we're just unhappy because I'm grieving or I'm stressed out, etc. And I shouldn't have taken responsibility for a relationship. It's two people, you know, it takes two people to tango. And I'm not blaming him and I'm not blaming me, but I'm just letting you know that when you're in like these seasons of the unknown, it can shine a really brutal light on what's not working in your world. And I didn't want to look at it for a really long time, and that's completely okay, because I didn't have the capacity. I did not have the capacity or the confidence to throw a grenade into my life, because I've been thrown into the unknown by losing my dad, and I was deep in this inner child healing and reparenting myself and learning my attachment styles. And that work, that part of the journey to becoming like your best self and your authentic self, oh my God, it is intense, but worth it. Again, I'm not here to scare you or disempower you. It is worth it. But if you've got this inkling that other things in your life, while you're sort of navigating this void and change, are not in alignment, be compassionate with yourself. Like, you know, you got to find that balance of like not avoiding things, but also understanding where your capacity was, because, you know, our relationship probably should have ended a lot sooner, but I'd never been through grief and he had never supported someone that had been through grief. Like, I was the first person in like my wider community to deal with grief. So we're all just the blind leading the blind, and my heart is hanging out of my fucking chest. We're all like, you know, we've all just been in this shorter bandwidth of like, you know, oh, sometimes going through a breakup, sometimes having a stressful day, and then I'm thrown into this just complete unknown. So, you know, we all just did the best that we could, but it was also, I was so painfully aware that death and grief and loss and these seasons of initiation shine a really brutal light on what's not working. So I have actually recorded a podcast episode. I think it's called something along the lines of starting over in your 30s. And I do go more into depth about what I've been through over the last few years in this sort of area, because like I said, I sort of held a match and lit it up and let my old life go up in flames. And it's like, it's such a wild journey and a beautiful initiation. And now a year later, I'm sitting here living on the Gold Coast in my beautiful studio, just so incredibly in awe of the woman that I've become. So you can listen to that Starting Over in Your 30s podcast episode as well. But basically, that's another massive initiation that I went through in the last few years, was letting go of that relationship, and also just realizing like it's like it's hard to let it go, but I also knew it was time. It's not one of those will they, won't they endings. It was no, this relationship has run its course. But he also was originally from another country, and he moved back to that country while we were still together, which now I reflect on was very avoidant tendencies, because obviously he's feeling the discomfort and the discord of our relationship, but very avoidant tendencies in the sense of like, he didn't just move back to get away from me sort of thing, but it was like, we probably should have dealt with the relationship while we were still in the same country. But maybe he was trying to hope for the best as well. And I had plans he moved over first, and then I was going to move over with Clifford, my beautiful dog. It was ours at the time, but he was only Clifford's dad for 4 years, so he was still like my dog. How's me like giving that disclaimer? He was my dog. But he was my absolute bloody soulmate, that dude, and I love him so much. So yeah, basically, while I'm still navigating a wild few years, my partner at the time relocated to a different country, back to his homeland, which is totally fine. But, you know, in my mind, I'm a bit like, if you loved me and we were in a long-term relationship, like, couldn't you have waited and we've done it together? You know what I mean? Like, at the time, you're trying to convince yourself, like, this is cool. And then you look back and you're like, that was not cool. Not on him, but like the whole scenario that was just, the elephant in the room was getting bigger and bigger about how we were falling out of love. And I think because I was navigating grief and a lot of other things, like I said, I didn't have the capacity to look at it. So I'm projecting our happiness into the future, and I'm like, no, like when I relocate and we settle and I get the job and all of these things, then we'll be happy, then the relationship will thrive. And if you've ever been there in that where you're trying to make it work, that's okay. Be so compassionate with yourself. But I got to the point where I was like, this isn't going to work anymore. So a 4-year relationship ended over a 15-minute phone call. And at the time that I decided to end that relationship, I was we'd gotten some new housemates into our home that we were sharing, and then he moved back overseas, and I was like, obviously, you know, taking the lead with all of that, you know, being the tenant, etc. And basically really quickly, my home that was with friends that I had and my partner at the time, a few people moved out, including my partner moving overseas. We got new housemates in, and it completely turned into such a toxic situation. And you know what? Maybe that was reflecting where I was at. It was a wild experience. Again, go and listen to my podcast episode, Starting Over in Your 30s. But basically, where I go deeper into that. But basically, you know, I'm navigating grief, and I'm navigating, you know, this elephant in the room of my long-term relationship not feeling stable anymore, not serving the woman that I want to become, and I was becoming. And then your home that should feel like your safety net and your safe place, your security, was a completely toxic place, and I was just so stressed out, etc. So I've decided to pull the pin on that as well, and relocate from Northern Rivers, which is on the north coast of New South Wales, and move back up to the Gold Coast, which I know and love from living here for years before I was down in Northern Rivers. And at the time I was like, I'll only move up for a few months while I'm saving up money to relocate overseas to, you know, start this new chapter with my partner at the time. And then obviously I've ended that relationship. I'm moving out of my place. And I didn't find a home here on the Gold Coast for 3.5 months. And that was the end of last year. So my sense of stability in so many areas, it was like relationships and my relationship with life, because that's what grief does, is it, sorry, just turning off the aircon. It's getting chilly. What a beautiful privilege to have aircon though. You know, I'm not complaining. I just needed to change the temperature. So as I'm accepting these invitations to initiate into the woman that I know that I am not right now, but at the time I knew that I could become her, but I am her now. But there's so many layers to it. I love it. I was, you know, feeling instability in my relationship with life, because that's what death invites you to look at. I was feeling instability in my relationships. I was feeling instability in my reality, because I didn't have a home, and I was, you know, couch surfing and staying in friends' spare rooms. And I have a van, but I didn't want to like free camp on the streets because that's illegal and dangerous. There was a few nights I'd find a little spot here and there, but not sustainable, you know. So I was parking in friends' driveways because then it was on private property. And it was just, this is at the end of last year. So this time last year, obviously. And it was just a wild time. And then again, go and listen to that episode where I'm talking about starting over in my 30s. But I ended up finding a home and I started living by myself. And that is brought me to 2025. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to live by myself. But it has been an initiation in itself, because I have had to learn how to have my back and not distract myself. And it's not that the value of community and human connection has skyrocketed for me this year living by myself. But it's also about me finding that balance of enjoying my solitude, which I believed that I did and do. But then you're sort of propelled into that in deeper and deeper ways, because obviously I'm living by myself. And then in the last 3 weeks, I've lost my dog, Clifford, who that loss is 10 million times worse than anything I've been through in the last 3 years, times a bazillion million. And he was also my companion because I'm living by myself. So he was the other heartbeat in the house. So it's just like, I love my solitude, but I just feel like this year I've been invited deeper and deeper and deeper into it. But also having to be proactive with my community and finding human connection, because you need that balance. But also I needed to live by myself for this year, because it's, the year of the snake with all of the shedding. But I've been able to fast track so much of my spiritual development being by myself. And it was very much that energy of like trimming the fat of living in busy share houses and bickering over bills, even when like a share house was a good social experience. And like I said, towards the end, we just got some misaligned housemates in, and something that was already a living experience that was weighing on me from being, in busy share houses. You're always sort of like, you can hear noise and you can't, drop into your energy and all of that sort of stuff. That was already weighing me down. And then to get misaligned housemates was just, the cherry on top. But sometimes life has to make you so uncomfortable that you do things. And that's another of the millions of lessons from these last few years, is that you have to leverage the discomfort that is brought into your life, or you potentially create, to make a change. Because when you're, sort of in a good job or sort of in a good relationship, you're never going to do what you need to do to initiate into that next level of being your best self, or having, just gotta check. Oh yeah, sorry, my laptop just went to sleep and I just need to check it was still recording. So we're here. So the housemate situation last year with the misaligned housemates, it's like life has to put you in such an uncomfortable position that I make a change, because you can get in your head and be like, oh, the rental crisis, and it's going to be too expensive and hard to move. And it was expensive, and it was really hard to move, because we were living in a 3-story 4-bedroom house, and my partner and I owned everything, and then he fucked off overseas and I had to deal with all the logistics. So yeah, it was a bloody lot. But sometimes you just, there's the waters in your life need to be murkied up. That's not a word, but murkied up to bring you to where I am now, which is in my gorgeous, amazing studio. Like I said, with the time this year to really lock into all of these lessons. I've built my entire Oasis State Club platform out of this, because I'm not coming home to someone where I can, spend time with and get distracted by. Obviously, I'm calling in that, but I'm never going to go back to living in a share house. But it'd be beautiful to call in a romantic partner and come home to people, because I'm used to coming home to Clifford. Now he's fucked off. I, eventually will call in someone else to come home to, and I would love that to be my soulmate. So yeah, but I digress. I'm just letting you know my manifestation list. So yeah, I know in my bones that as uncomfortable as it has been living by myself this year, I've fully just stepped into my power. It's absolutely insane what I've been able to do this year. But like I said, I was really finding my comfort with it, but then losing Clifford means that I'm actually living by myself now, and it's wild. So a few other mentionable milestones and events that have happened in my wild years have been having to end really important relationships as well. So like I said, all of this instability happens in different areas of your life, and I have had to end, beautiful long-term friendships. And you don't end them without, it's like when you set a boundary or you end something, it's not an inactive experience. In my experience, I would go and speak to that person that I love and say, hey, I'm feeling like this, or I'd like you to meet me here, or what's going on. It's like an active experience, having to end something or set a boundary. And unfortunately, those people in my life didn't want to meet me with where I was at and with what I needed to feel safe and secure and appreciated in those connections. And again, like I said, there's no animosity. That's fine. Everyone's a temporary experience. Even, beautiful relationships are a temporary experience, and we had to end those. But I had to go back into a grieving process, because grieving doesn't just happen from death, it happens from endings. And I've been in a season for the last few years where there's been literally 10 times more endings than there have been hellos. And that's the wild, disorientating experience, because you hope that when you end things that the new thing will come along quite quickly. And I did mention at the start of this podcast episode, it's taken a lot longer than I expected, but it all makes sense now. So if you've been brave enough to end things that are out of alignment in your life and the new thing hasn't come along yet, you just have to trust in divine timing. And like I said, you don't have to enjoy it. You can trust and fucking hate it. That's so important, to give yourself that self-compassion piece and realize that two things can be true at once. And that's okay. Throw your fucking toys out the cot and then straighten up your crown and put your big girl pants on and keep going on with life, because that's what faith is. It's like, it's a blind trust. You're blindly trusting that, you know, aligned souls or the new job or whatever it is you want to be replaced by, the thing that you've taken out of your life, will come along, and it will. But I think that was a bit of an ego death for me, or a bit of a, you know, having to let go of control, because I'm like, oh, if I end all of these things, all of these new things will come along. So that's a grieving process in itself as well. I also really decided to lock in with my business. As you know, I've mentioned what I've done this year, but I've had to do it and all of these endings in my physical reality cause endings in your inner world. You've got to let go of identities and let go of expectations and beliefs and blah, blah, blah. This is all the stuff I go into in Oasis State Club. So I also let go of my full-time secure job last year and jumped into locking into my business. And that's, like I said, being an entrepreneur is personal development on crack. So that is another piece of the pie where I've had to navigate a lot of the unknown and endings and get really clear on my relationship with money and decondition from hustle culture and all of these things. It's actually insane. So endings and initiations and all of that can also happen in the area of purpose and career. And then, no, I only want to mention two more major things that have happened this year. And one of them was reconnecting with a long-term friend that I fell in love with, and we fell in love with each other. And it was not on either of our bingo cards. We just came together. He dropped into my oh my God, I'm looking down at recording and it's 1111, like 1111. Oh, that's beautiful. This beautiful man rocked into my DMs about this time last year and just, suggested that we cross paths. And I was like, well, fuck it, I'll go. I'm recently going through a breakup. I'm couch surfing. I'm landing back on the Gold Coast. Like, there was just so much change. It was insane. And we went and met up and something just clicked. Like, it was wild. It was so beautiful. And I still love him now. We're not together anymore. We were never really together. It's one of those things where you have to grieve the potential in this beautiful connection and this beautiful man, but he wasn't ready to commit or be consistent and offer me what I wanted and deserved. And that's what boundaries are. You're not blocking someone else out. You're telling them what you need to feel safe to continue offering them access to you. And I feel like I very lovingly told him what I needed, and he wasn't ready to be consistent, and that's completely okay. But it's wild because we've been friends for a decade, and we actually ran into each other. We've just had all these faded star-crossed moments, and it's just been really beautiful, and I miss him a lot. And sorry. I think just in the grief of losing Clifford, I'm really missing him, because he was such a sense of safety for me and connection. And it's just not very often that you these connections sort of activate in your life, a really deep, beautiful connection where we just felt so safe. And I didn't I've known him, but the level of connection that we had, it just felt like he became one of my best friends, but we weren't seeing each other that often. I don't know, it was so beautiful. And I'm really grateful for all the time that we had together. But I know it was a few months ago now, I had to set a pretty strong boundary and he decided not to be a part of my life, and that's completely okay. And it's just so wild because, living by myself for the last year, I had to grieve the ending of my long-term relationship. And like I said, there wasn't any love lost there. I knew that relationship needed to end, but then I also had to grieve this whole new life that I thought I was going to live in another country. I was going to relocate to continue the relationship and, start my business and all of those things. So living alone this year, I've navigated the ending of that long-term relationship, which brings up a lot when you're in your 30s as well. You're meant to not be in that relationship anymore, but also there's so much like sneaky conditioning around settling down and having kids and all of that. And that's another thing I've had to grieve this year. So much has gone on, is the potential of having kids. And I haven't grieved it like it's not an option anymore, but I had to let it go and just trust that I will meet a man that, I connect with and can commit to me and show me my worth and respect me and all of those, juicy things from a conscious relationship. But yeah, in having to end the connection that I have with an old friend this year, I had to grieve having kids as well, because it's just, if I held on too tight to that, it just didn't feel right. So grieving is sometimes like it's a detachment process as well. And it's not to say that I'm not going to have kids, but just ending a long-term relationship in my 30s and then having this gorgeous potential with this other man and that not being able to meet me where I was at anymore. Obviously you think about having kids and will it ever happen? So that's what I had to grieve as well. I had to grieve, like I said, this connection with this beautiful man, because that was different to the ending of the long-term relationship, because I've had to grieve potential. I've had to grieve, just so much. And like I said, I'm just a bit emotional about it because he's been on my mind a lot as I've been navigating the loss of Clifford as well, because he was such a sense of safety and connection for me. So obviously when you're going through grief, you want to lean on that. And yeah, I'm doing all of this while I'm living alone, by the way. And this year I've lived alone and I've locked into my business and I'm putting myself out there socially. And you know what I mean? I'm leveraging all of this discomfort and the sadness and the heartbreak and all of it into aligned action and letting it build me into the version of myself I know I am and can be and continue to be, And then this crazy season of initiation ended with losing Clifford unexpectedly 3 weeks ago. And like I said, that loss is like the worst times a million. Sorry, because he was just my best mate and my soulmate and my companion. And I think I need to record like a whole nother episode on this, because the beliefs that I have about life and about my purpose and everything are the thing that have held me and kept me steady through all of this. But everything that I have been through in the last few years, I've had to put to the test and embody and remember and utilize over the last 3 weeks with Clifford. So the last few years have been, like I said, very disorientating and massive voids. And every time I try to tether myself to something, it gets taken away. And that's one of the millions of the lessons, because I had to learn how to tether myself to myself. Does that make sense? It's like I am the calm in the storm now, not a relationship, not a particular identity, not even my dog. Like, oh man. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to, like, my career is not going to thrive and I'm not going to, meet a man that can actually commit to me and all of that sort of stuff. But it's just one of those seasons where everything needed to be stripped back, because I had to learn how to do that for myself in my inner world. And I know, like I said, my outer world reflects my inner world. And it just felt like the finality of that season of initiation. I felt it so strongly in navigating the loss of Clifford. And there'll still be trials and tribulations in my life, but 2026 is a season where I'm moving into. Those last few years, I was a student. I was the energy of being a student. And we're always a student for life, I haven't mastered everything, bloody hell. But these particular teachings, I was a student, and now I've clicked into this archetype of being a teacher. And I'm so excited to call in my aligned community to help them do just that. Because like I said, I'm still learning and I'm still evolving, but you just feel it in your bones where you're like, okay, I'm ready to step into that mentorship role, that teacher energy, that leadership role within my business, and call in my aligned community to support them. Because regardless of what's gone on in my personal life for the last few years, there are so many changes and initiations happening on a collective level. So I know it's so important for me to be stepping into this teacher energy and to find my particular community and aligned clients and things like that, because not only are we navigating these massive, gnarly personal changes in our lives, collectively, we're going to need to learn how to navigate change and these initiations and the unknown, and how to alchemize pain into power and fear into love and separation into oneness and all of those things, because it's going to be a wild few years collectively as well. And I think I need to do more episodes on this. I thought it would just be one episode, but I have a lot to unpack, and if you're still listening, I'm so grateful you've been a part of this journey, and I hope that you've been able to see some form of your journey in my journey, because you're not alone in this. And whether it's grief or loss or heartbreak, or taking a leap of faith and moving somewhere, or changing your career, or starting a business, like I said, there's just so many pieces of the pie and so many areas of your life where this stuff happens. And thank God it does. Like, I've been through so much loss and death and heartbreak, and I don't feel any animosity towards any of the things that have happened. I'm not angry at life for taking my loved ones away from me. I'm not angry at the people whose major relationships I had to end. I'm not angry at anything. I was for a bit there, but that's the emotional alchemy process. And this is one of the many things that I teach in Oasis State Club, because I can sit here now in this moment in my studio with my business as the woman that I am, and realizing and still be so deeply seated in a space of love and trust and understanding, even though I am 3 weeks into grieving the loss of my dog, who was my soulmate. And I still trust, and I'm still showing up, and I'm doing all of the things that I couldn't do 3 years ago when I first lost my dad. And every relationship is different, and every experience with grief is different, but I just feel like it happened the way that it did in my life, so that I can see how far I've come, because I was a puddle of a human being when I lost my dad a few years ago, and then I've sat in the fire again and again and again through all of the things that I've explained in this podcast episode. And then to lose my dog Clifford, which, like I said, is the worst loss times a million, but to feel so grounded in who I am and trusting myself and taking aligned action. Like, I literally closed down my business when I lost my dad, because I was like, I don't know who I am, and I don't understand how life works. And to keep holding those questions so central to everything that I was going through, in the void and the loss and the confusion for years, I can be 3 weeks into losing Clifford and know exactly who the fuck I am. And I'm going to continue getting to know myself. So I'm getting so emotional. And I know what life is about. Like, well, we don't know, but I'm so deeply seated in a space of trust. And I trust Clifford, and I trust that he knew it was time to go. And I knew that we had a soul contract, and he honored it, and we've honored it. And even though sometimes it doesn't make sense right now, and I am feeling the loss, and that's the point of it, but I trust him, and I trust in the divine plan and the timing of everything. And I know that this initiation of losing Clifford, because I've lost my sense of purpose. Like, when you have a dog, you have a purpose. Like, I have many purposes, but I've been able to channel that loss of purpose and that desire to have a purpose into Oasis State Club. And that's something I've been recording content for, and the lessons for, and the PDFs and everything that's gone into that club. I've been doing that outside of the multiple streams of income that I have daily for months and months and months. And I've been in this patient and this balance of patience and proactiveness. And like I said, because I haven't done podcast episodes in a while, because that's what I've been doing. I've been creating this platform, this safe place, because it's not just a platform and it's not just a safe place. It's a revolution. It's how we're alchemizing all of the pain and confusion of these particular seasons on our spiritual development journey and these initiations into actual purpose, into actual power and peace and freedom. And I'm so grateful. Even though I've been through hell and back for the last few years, I am so grateful. And even though I've got a really strong idea of what 2026 is going to be, it's still confusing at times to think, why am I not doing this with Clifford? But I trust myself, I trust him, and I trust life. And that's one of the many and beautiful lessons that I've learned in these last few years. And if any of my journey has resonated with you, I strongly encourage you to join Oasis State Club and allow me the honor of guiding you through your season, because it's only temporary, and I bloody tell you what, I can make it a lot easier for you. And it doesn't have to be as hard as it was for me, because I think for me it's so isolating. But that's what I've mentioned a few times in this podcast episode, is that it's all of these things that have happened to me, and living by myself this year have reminded me how important community and human connection is in this, because there is an aspect of solitude that is needed to do this work and understand it. But fucking hell, I wish Oasis State Club existed 3 years ago when I got thrown into this. And that's what purpose-led business is about, is seeing, the gaps in what we can offer people, and creating these communities and human connection to guide us through these gnarly times. So I'm going to leave it there, feeling really inspired to keep recording some episodes and diving deep into these different areas, because that was sort of like a zoomed out version of what I've been through, and not in a victimhood way, as I know. Excuse me, but I love you so much, and I really hope to meet you in Oasis State Club. Bye. Hey, my loves, I hope you loved the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all things Oasis State, and I'll see you in the next episode.